What's up, Dennis? I'm
What's
not
up, Bubbles?
not used to seeing you
What's
without your
up,
hat. You
Travers?
got like a nice supervillain look going to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if it's the background or just the camera, but what happened? It looks like it took all of the hair on your head and it put it on the bottom here. I don't know if that's a
Austin
camera trick.
Powers, welcome to my underground lair. Mini me, stop humping the laser.
Digital 410 Media proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts, Don Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Dennis Blocker.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. And we are here a day late, but not a dollar short, because yesterday was a holiday. We took the day off just like the rest of you, but we're playing catch up. And Jeff is back with us. Dennis is here, looking like a supervillain on his own private island, playing with his laser beam. What's going on, fellas? I just realized you just changed your background in like the split second. It was completely different. There was a rotation. Got a rotating background going.
A little Tarawa action going on there.
Nice. So, Jeff, you've been super busy, fella. What's been going on?
Yeah, it's the beginning of Living History season and air show season and all that. So yeah, I've been pulled a few different directions, and it's been a lot of fun having Dennis, really fully integrated into the hobby, and being able to support and add on to the display. Right? I mean, Don, some of our listeners know. You do these events and you bring all the stuff and the tables and everything's heavy and you're putting everything out, and you lose your voice after 2 days of talking to 10,000 people. And it's always nice to have a variety, right? I mean, I concentrate typically Air Corps. Don, you typically concentrate Marine Corps, and I know over the last 10 or so years doing this kind of traveling, there's not usually a Navy contingent.
No, there's not.
Um,
We're lucky we have. Sadly, he just passed away, and I'll talk about at the end of the show. But we had one guy down here who did a lot of it. And when the USS American Victory, the Liberty ship in Tampa Bay, would actually go out on the tours and float us around Tampa Bay, he would do his Navy impression and do a quite very good job at it. But yes, it's very true. Navy impressions are one of those that aren't done a lot.
yeah, and it's odd because Navy was such a huge force. It was everywhere in the world, right? I mean, obviously you do Marines, it's PTO. But yeah, I mean, the Navy was responsible for so much in World War II and lost so many. There were so many casualties that were Navy and related. So it's refreshing to have Dennis come out. Not only as having a good friend, a fellow podcaster, but to have him side by side to add to complement. The displays that we travel with has really been. It's just been cool, and I got to say, I think the coolest thing so far here this year and the start of Living History season for us was watching Dennis become the inheritor of artifacts from another reenactor. I mean,
The old
watching it,
hand-me-down.
watching stuff be dumped on him, handed over to him. He is now, responsible for it because somebody else saw Dennis as, it happens, right? People are like, you're the person that can take care of this and appreciate it and build it into your display, tell the story. And I've been very lucky with that over the years, and to sit back and watch somebody else light up when they're opening this briefcase of all this amazing
It's
stuff.
like the scene in Pulp
It's just
Fiction
like,
when he
oh
opens
my God.
the briefcase and the light hits his face. I just came up with the term "one man's duplicates is another man's impression," and he just got his impression built out. Because when you've been in the hobby as long as we have, what tends to happen, you'll be walking to the flea market like, I got 13 haversacks, but that thing's cheaper than a reproduction. And so you buy it, throw it in your. The next thing you're like, why do I have 13 haversacks? I know, I'll take 5 of them to the next event and offload some of them or give them away, depending on how close that person is to you. So yeah, that's part of the community of this hobby. And we've had a lot of reenactors on this show over the years, but I don't think we've had a new to the hobby reenactor, right? Most of the people come on here once they've done it in a while, they've had their spiel down. So Dennis, as someone who's new to the hobby and you're starting to get more and more acquainted with the people in the community, and you'll learn this. It's a small community, especially in your city, right? And so as you're going to these events, like you start to recognize faces and names, and you start to form your own little cliques and groups of people. Coming from a historian and an author and brought into this hobby, what's some of the things that either surprised you, stood out to you, or the things that you noticed or enjoyed? Just give us a fresh eye look into the hobby and what other people who are thinking about getting into living history could look forward to. Your mic's muted.
I
There
think
you go.
that one of the coolest things that I got to witness, and one of the things that really stood out during that weekend, because that was the first time that I had my own impression, and I had 3 tables, and it was a great setup too. It was Wade and Jeff came up with this idea of making our displays in a circle, and or more of like an oval, and so we were on the inside, and then all of our tables pointed out, all of the materials, and I had display boards and things that people could flip through, and then they had all their great stuff. So people were just continuously circling these tables,
Living
and they'd come
history in
back
the
over
round.
multiple times, and it was a blast. But when you asked something about something that surprised me, it was seeing in the face of a woman in her 60s this shock, and watch her face drain when she looks over and sees Jeff. And immediately her eyes filled with tears, and she started to smile, and she said, "You look just like my dad."
Wow.
And was it her dad, Jeff, or was it her grandfather or uncle? I think it was maybe her
Uncle.
uncle. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it was a beautiful moment for her, because it was like he was alive again. And she got to, for that split second, see, and it was like, oh, there he is, right? What's he doing here? And then the realization is that, of course, he's gone. But that split second impacted her so much that she asked Jeff if they could take multiple pictures together, and she was going to tell her family. Am I right, Jeff?
That's
It was very powerful.
Yeah, yeah, it really was, and as you know too, that's the second time that's happened in the last couple months. We had a woman come up when we were in San Antonio, and it was her father
That's
that had
right.
served, and she was retired Air Force. He flew, I want to say P-47s. She showed me a picture, and the whole 9 yards. And she kind of got a little teary eyed, but yeah, the lady in Dallas, it was like I almost was like, what happened? What, because
Yeah.
I didn't know you guys were talking. I was talking to somebody else, and so Dennis was facing out of the hangar towards where the ramp was, where the aircraft were parked, and then we had static aircraft inside. So I'm facing inside as the people come through the foyer. So we don't see each other's conversations a whole lot. I just happened to look over, and yeah, she was just kind of looking at me. She was there with her husband, and yeah, at first I thought there was something wrong. Like, oh gosh, what happened? Was there an accident outside? Something. Um, I had no idea. Yeah, it was just this emotion, just her seeing me, and her husband pulls out his phone and I think pulled out a picture of her uncle and shows Dennis, and you were like, wow, okay. And then they showed me, and she said he flew B-24s, and she said, could I get a picture with you? I said, she's absolutely. I said, let's go take a picture in front of the B-24. Fitting. And so I gave him my business card. I said I'd love to have, a copy of that and the original of the uncle. And they did that side by side thing and emailed that to me. And yeah, I mean, it's why we do that.
Mhm.
This is why we do that. And um, it just keeps those guys immortal. And, of course, right now on the heels of Memorial Day, there's no better time to help conjure those types of memories for people who had family that served in World War II. It just gives you a deeper appreciation. This goes beyond, we all grew up watching movies and playing John Wayne, and you want to be all of these things that you weren't, and that's fine. But it really kind of reiterated the true reason why we do this, and it just was a pleasure to just to meet those folks and have her her uncle and just take a picture, just something as simple as a picture. And I will say that there was some resemblance. The picture, the side by side, our crushers are cocked almost identically the same. Of course, it's the same uniform. He had a mustache, so it was just there was some resemblance, but I definitely get why it struck her like it did for sure.
Sometimes I got to remind myself, and I think probably a lot of our audience probably has forgotten this too. Living history was actually one of the first forms of history, right? Back, years and years back, in Native American times, back in caveman times, back in, European times, before everybody was literate and could write. They would tell stories verbally, and then they would have the members of the tribe reenact the battles that they had with other tribes, and all the way up through history. Yeah, it wasn't about World War II, but retelling the battles of how their tribes or how their grandfathers got to where they were in that point of history, because people weren't literate. It was done through dances, motions, reenacting battles, different format, but at the end of the day, it's all very similar, and it's one of the truest forms of history, and it's kind of important of why we need to help keep that alive.
Yeah, it's very cool. And yesterday I was out at the cemetery out in the small town, Castroville, and Memorial Day, I had something I do with my girls. This year they weren't with me, but I'll go find the headstones of veterans that have been overgrown or covered with mud. Some of them are half buried under mud that from the rains, and then I'll restore them. I took a weed eater with me, and scrub brush and this and that broom and a couple other things, and get it back to them. That I bought little spinners, little pinwheels at Walmart, patriotic pinwheels, and a flag, and some flowers, carnations that were red, white, and blue. And I put a flower, and a flag, and a pinwheel at each headstone. And when I was done, I decided to walk up the hill, because looking down, you just see all of the headstones and all of the flags where the veterans are. And it was just stunning, because this is a small town, and it was just so many flags. And I was sitting underneath a shade tree at the top of this hill, just looking over everything. And I had my little harness and my Bose harness that plays music out. And I was listening to the song from Saving Private Ryan, Visitation to Normandy, where it shows the elderly gentleman walking up to that song was playing. I had it on a loop over and over and over again as I was doing this work. And as I'm sitting up there, and you asked earlier, Don, about how it was to then come into this community. I glanced down at the headstone next to me where I put my chair, and it is a fellow's named Mangold, and it says U.S. Army Air Corps, 8th Air Force. And immediately I was brought back to the weekend up there in Dallas, and the privilege I had to be there with Jeff and Wade, and it made me very circumspect in the way that I was processing what I was doing. And I pulled out this cigar that Wade had given me, and I sat underneath there, and I'm sitting among all these veterans, and I'm just smoking this cigar that was given to me by Wade, who's got his own impression that he does, which is always excellent, in the Jeep that he had there. And I made a little video, and I sent it to Jeff and Wade and told them, and I mentioned the other guys that I had met. And it's interesting you said that, Don, because that's who I thought of out there. For some reason, I didn't think about my grandfather as much as I thought I would. And I didn't think about my great grandpa who was killed at Aachen. But I thought about what we do is so important, because it keeps all these guys, it keeps them alive, and it keeps their stories going, and they're not forgotten, not by us.
You guys are talking about cleaning gravestones, and I saw a quick blurb on the story today, and it didn't even really, I was like, well, that's cool. But I think it goes in line exactly with what you're talking about. We can all agree that politics in this country are a mess right now, but check this out. I didn't know this is the 4th year doing this. In the early morning rain, a group of congressmen some of them still in suits after an all-night voting session, cleaned the memorial of 58,000 Americans killed in the Vietnam War. The group calls itself For Country. This is their fourth year in a row washing the wall. Jack Bergman, a retired Marine Corps lieutenant general, is one of only 3 Vietnam veterans still in Congress. So a lot of these guys in the video scene, some of them are 3-piece suits, some of them have their veteran gear on, but these guys, active congressmen, some of them are up voting all night. They're out there with scrub brushes, out in the rain, soap, and they're cleaning the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C., which is very, very cool to see.
That's cool.
And so shout out to
That's
them
awesome.
for that. Just because we're on the topic of living historians, Memorial Day, and the community. One of the things we all love about doing living history is the community, especially when you've been doing it as many years as I have. There kind of becomes, in your individual community, your states, your regions, a lot of reenacting is a regional thing. Like for us, we have Florida and a couple of guys from Georgia and a couple of Alabama boys always roll in. But there's always the reliable face, right? There's always the guys you know that are going to be there, or the guys that, if they're not there, you're like, what's going on with that? This year, the Florida Living History community, we've lost 3 of those gentlemen. We spoke about John Thomas about a month ago, 2 months ago. He's the gentleman who got me into doing First ID. Then about a month back, Jerry English passed away. Now, Jerry, I don't want to go on record to say his age. I don't know exactly, but he was probably in his late 70s. So he died of quote unquote natural causes. He's been around. Him and John Thomas were both there. Like when I started, they were the veterans. They were the go-to guys. And there was another gentleman that passed away too, which completely caught me off guard. He made the announcement a few months back that he had stage 4 brain cancer. And this is another contemporary of mine. The guy's probably 6 years older than me. His name was Mike Alvarez. Mike's uncle was in the 82nd Airborne in World War II. He was a historian through and through. He did Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War II, World War I, the whole gambit. He had the uniforms, the gear. He knew everything. I have a bunch of my photos. The 82nd Airborne demonstration I did where I'm sitting when we did that video. Mike's sitting behind me when we're walking out. Mike's in there. So Mike just passed away. His funeral was last Friday. He had some of his living historians doing color guard in full uniform. June 3rd, we're having the Zephyr Hills event where we're doing obviously D-Day, but we're also going to have a memorial to Jerry and Mike and John as well. But it got me thinking, we're all of age cats now, right? And World War II living history, Civil War living history, that's one thing. But I got to think, it's not even relegated down to that. It doesn't matter if you're a little league coach, right? And all the coaches on your little league conference are all in their 30s and 40s. Or let's say you're a Boy Scout or whatever. Any sort of extracurricular activity that requires logistics, planning, organization, funding. You have a core group of guys, right? And a lot of those guys have been doing it forever, and they're getting older and older. And sadly, life happens, whether it's cancer, old age, accidents. These guys are going to start dying out. And all of a sudden, that community is getting a lot smaller, especially in areas like living history where we're not replenishing with younger kids, right? It's getting harder and harder. Well, for a while, we're starting to see a little bit of injection now, but it's getting a little harder and harder to replenish. But even if we are replenishing, what kind of happens is you got your the middle ground guys, the guys we like to show up, set up, and take on the least amount of responsibility, right? We just want to be responsible for our stuff and then leave. But I just want to remind everybody, and I kind of got pulled into this 2 years ago with VKE when Art retired, where Paul and I took over VKE, and now Paul, Nate, and I are kind of trying to do more to help maintain the living history here in Florida. But I just want to reach out to our audience, say, hey, if you're a living historian and you've been doing this for a while, you know your community, and you show up, you bring your impression, you're killing it. End of the weekend, you're picking up and going home. That's fantastic. But do me a favor, your next event, look around, see who your organizers are, see who your community leaders are, and ask yourself, who are their replacements? Who can we count on to keep this community alive in the event that something were to happen to them? And ask yourself, is that something that you could see yourself doing? Not now, but maybe just kind of stop. And once again, it could be Little League, whatever. Ask yourself that. And if the answer is even remotely yes, go talk to those people. Not say, hey, I want to replace you, but say, hey, can you kind of show me the ropes of this thing so I can help you out? And that way, when those cornerstone people pass, it's important for the love of the community. And as we say, keeping the history alive, we need to have people we can count on who are ready to step up if the moment calls upon them. And it's crazy to get where I'm at that point now, where it's like, I don't look at my age as like 46. I don't think that's old, but it's like in the last 5 years, I've known 4 people now in their 40s who've all passed away. And it's kind of like not so much a mortality thing, but when it comes to this sort of thing, just if you guys love your living history community, your book club, your bowling league, your Sunday softball league, whatever it is, just get to know the people who organize it and just ask yourself, for the love of whatever it is, would you be willing to start learning those roles so that you can take the place to help your hobby, your community live on in worst case scenarios? Because I think a lot of people, showing up is cool, but sometimes if the organizers aren't there, there's not going to be an event to go to. So just put that out there in the ether, maybe to help revitalize some of the living history communities throughout the country and world.
Yeah, I think that's part of good leadership too. I mean, I learned that in the Army. When every time you're getting promoted, as you go up, you're looking down, grabbing the next guy and bringing him up with you, right? As you make E4, he's E3, and then when you make Buck Sergeant, you're pulling him up to be a good specialist, and so on and so on. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's every leader's responsibility to be able to name their replacement, or at least have a plan in place to where, in the event of something drastic, whoever does come in is not caught off guard. And I think that's important. That's definitely a lesson I learned over the years as not a very good administrator. I'm not an administrator. I don't keep good records. Anybody who knows me on social, like, wow, I did all these amazing things. I don't even have a picture to prove it, right? I don't document what I'm doing. I'm living the moment.
Yeah.
I'm not taking pictures of it. So, but I mean, having been in several, roles with responsibilities in the community, in living history, and so on, yeah, that to me, that's that person's job. That's part of the responsibility. And to your point with the young folks coming up, man, Dennis, I know you're probably thinking of him. That kiddo we met in Dallas. So we met a reenactor, Don. You're going to love this. I am probably the biggest Memphis Belle fan you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
But I may have met a very close second. And the kid's not 18 yet. But his impression was spot on. And it's not just, oh, I'm 8th Air Force, or I'm 91st Bomb Group, or I'm 324th Bomb Squadron. No. His impression was the raid on November of 1942, early on in the Memphis Belle's career, when it was a low-level mission to the coast of France. It was not a high-altitude mission. So they wore different things. So
that's what I was going to say.
That was his impression.
That's risky move going early, because the earlier you go, the harder the crap you're trying to find to be authentic is.
Right. And he even had the early war Mae West, the B3. Inspection stamped and everything was dated perfectly, and the kid's not even 18 yet. So that right there really gives me hope. There is another generation that's going to take it over. I mean, it's just the natural course of things, but we cannot think that that's automatic.
Yeah.
It's up to this core group to kind of bring up the next generation, the passing of the baton, so to speak, and it'll come. And
Well, and plus we
You
got to
know,
maintain his events, right? If we stop maintaining the events, stop scheduling, there's not going to be an event for the young kids to go to fall in love with the hobby.
right,
And
right.
that's the other problem, especially, I know I can name 2 museums in Florida over the last 7 years that have closed up. One of them was a beautiful museum up in Lakeland, Florida. Thing was immaculate. You walked in there, it was one of these things where it started out as a guy's private collection, and he kind of rented a space, and then through attendance and donations, he had almost like movie sets. You go around the corner, you're walking down an alley in the French Resistance, and you see a store shop with a broken window. You look inside, and there's a German machine gun nest built in there with MG42s. If you go on my Facebook page, go back 12 years, you'll see photos from there. Guy passed away. Didn't really have a organized corporation to maintain it. Family was like, whoa, this is way too much for us. Only thing we can do is, liquidation sale. And it's kind of like the old meme. What's the old meme? My biggest fear is I'm going to pass away and my wife sells my guns for what I told her I paid for them. But more importantly, that was one less quality museum, or just one less museum in general, to have events, because they would have us out there 2-3 times a year as a fundraiser for them. But for us to do living history in this beautiful backdrop, it was just so awesome to do. But it's, so in order to maintain this hobby and to maintain a community, you also got to, find people to maintain the events. And more importantly, you got to show up, right? These guys can schedule events, go out and do logistics. I remember after my first tactical, Mike Blosky did a Marine Corps tactical, and it was awesome. We did another one a year later, and the attendance was down. And he's like, the amount of logistics and organization and the funding and all the stuff, the planning I put in this, that not having anybody show up, it's like, it just knocked the wind out of his sails. And so, Jeff can tell you, this stuff is not easily organized. It's not easily done to find time on calendars that doesn't conflict with other people's events. And so, our job is not only to show up and do history, but to show up for the events to make sure they're going to be around next year and the year after that.
That Saturday was a freaking blast. We got up early and they opened up the hangar doors, and immediately a gust of wind blew everything, all of my displays down.
Oh, the value of paperweights.
The weakness was revealed, and I'm just like, oh man, I was super bummed. And so my mind, I'm processing, okay, what assets do I have? What do I got to do to keep these display boards up? Because they're awesome display boards, and there's, but I was looking off to the side and I saw those stanchions that keep people in line or keep people from going off limits.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked, and they let me use. So I put those on the table, and the stanchion pulled the cord across, and then as the wind was blowing, it kept everything. It worked. That start of that day was just a blast. Getting to meet everybody. The conversations, a fella coming up to me with a brief, he saw. Your table speaks about you, as a person, as a historian, as an impressionist, as a person who loves World War II history and wants to preserve it. And this fella saw that all the work that had been done, and all the detail and the great artifacts and this and that. And he was feeling his mortality. He had felt he had a close brush with death and had lost about 80 pounds, and he looked skeletal. And all the next thing I know, he's coming up to me with this briefcase, and he's like, this is for you. And I open it up, and it's just chock full of World War II stuff, and it's all Navy related, and pictures and dog tags and medals and ID cards, and like so much
Stuff would have taken you years to track down, especially nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. And and it was exactly what Jeff told me was going to happen, is that people are going to see what you do and the pride you take in it, and they don't know what to do with some of this stuff, and they're like, here's the perfect repository. And then the benefit is that your display gets better. After that, then,
and more unique. because your display is built off of real artifacts that someone has collected 30 years ago, and you're not buying the same stuff that everybody else is trying to scoop together off of eBay or the reproduction stuff. To have something walk in that this guy probably has spent 20 years tracking down different locations, it's going to make your impression, your display, so much more unique than the next guy. Not that a lot of people are doing Navy, so you have that too. But yeah, you just can't beat a homegrown collection that someone has spent years organizing, especially if they started years ago. So as somebody who's been carrying a firearm for over 13 years daily, one of the biggest inconveniences is when you come home, you need to take your firearm off of yourself and put it somewhere safe, somewhere secure, especially if you have kids. Now, I know most of us are responsible. We have a gun safe somewhere, but let's be honest, usually these gun safes are big, they're bulky, they're kind of out of the way because they're a bit of an eyesore. Your wife doesn't want them where everybody can see them, so sometimes they're in your closet behind some clothes, sometimes they're in the garage, sometimes they're in the mudroom. And let's be honest, taking your firearm out and walking to those locations to secure it is a pain in the butt. But you have to be a responsible firearm owner, especially if you have kids in the house. That's why you need to get yourself a StopBox Pro portable gun safe. You can make it non-portable. You can drill some holes in it, mount it to a place of convenience in your house, but it requires no batteries and no electricity. You simply come in your house, walk up to your safe, choose your finger button combinations, open a safe, remove your firearm from your person, put it in the safe. If you close your safe, just that easy, it's secure. So do yourself a favor, head over to stopboxusa.com/D410 and get all the information today on your StopBox Pro. When seconds count, trust the only non-fail firearm storage box, StopBox Pro, at stopboxusa.com/D410.
It was it was pretty awesome. After that, they closed up shop, and then everybody left, and the guys started. It was fun to watch all these grown men giggle as they got into their different impressions, and because now it's playtime, and they have a B-29 there, you got a B-24 there, and so it was a Hollywood city. It was like reenactments, great pictures taken from inside the B-29, and everybody's in their proper positions. You got every seat is manned, and these just great photographs were taken. And I'm the Navy guy, so what are you gonna do?
This has been a Digital 410 production.
Hand me a fire extinguisher. I'll make sure the engine doesn't light off. But it was a lot of fun. And then we rolled in a circular table in the middle of all of our tables, and we sat around and had brats and some baked beans, and we had some whiskey that I brought, and we went out and smoked some cigars that Wade and Jeff brought. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Jeff, what did we do then?
Well, I busted out the old projector, and on the back of the hangar door, we watched an amazing documentary that Dennis had introduced me to, and of course, with all of these Air Corps guys here, and none of them had seen it. And we can't forget about our one boy that was set up in the foyer, who, I mean, he had his grandfather served in the 91st Bomb Group. So he had his dad's bomber jacket and dinghy whistle and all everything that would have been pinned on his uniform, all the different sets of wings, and he had all kinds of stuff. And he's got one of the only complete survival kits in the country. He thinks there's only 4 correct complete survival kits with the correct fuses and everything, right?
Fishing
so the
line.
guy's like super collector. And he hadn't even seen this documentary called Target for Today. So yeah, we put it on, and man, yeah,
I went and popped popcorn.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I have to say, Dennis was a great sailor, because in the morning he's pouring us coffee and he's making us breakfast and waffles, and he fluffed our pillow on our cot. It was great. It was.
That's awesome.
But I have to say this. Speaking of exposing, seriously though, speaking of exposing weaknesses, here's what makes Dennis's display really fantastic. Is, I've been in education for several years now. I put a bunch of stuff on a table, right? If I'm not there to talk about it, people look at it. Dennis's is there to educate you. And that's what really seeing his display, it just kind of
Interactive.
go, huh. Yeah, it's interactive. He's got things, he's got the ships that you can flip over, the wooden ships, and it gives you this information, the display boards. Yeah, in the wind, they're tough, and he's going to find out other ways, but it definitely has made me think, and I think I mentioned it to him that weekend, like, man, I just got a bunch of cool stuff spread out, right? And a Jeep for people to sit in, but like, I need to work on that. I need to work on what is this stuff? What's significant about it? Because again, if I'm there, which I usually am, hey, here's a whatever, and check out this silk map, and look at the difference between a 50 caliber and a 20 millimeter cannon. Like, I got all that, right? I've got everything to generate any kind of conversation, from survival, escape, evasion, your gear, personal effects, the goofy stuff, the hair tonic, what a shaver looks like, to a bar of soap. I mean, I got all that, but you take me out of the equation, and nobody's going to really learn anything.
Yeah.
Dennis doesn't even have to be there, and the people are coming by, they're reading everything, so that to me is the value of his display. Is it's educational by itself. And that definitely showed me that I've got some holes. As cool as my display, that's great. I've got some holes. And I think it's the lesson that any reenactor who does any kind of a display can learn, because that's typically what we do. They put up a small fly tent, or throw out a bunch of field tables and foot lockers and whatever, and it's stuff.
Yeah.
Like, very rarely, unless, now again, when I was at the museum, that was different because that was our job. But Dennis is really truly, like, it educates you.
Yeah, I think a lot of
that's
us
been inspiring.
get so caught up in the chase of the artifact that when we get it, we're just rummaging through all of our stuff the night before, right? Oh, I want to do this impression, I need this, and this. You throw it in your duffel bag, and you get there and you just lay it out. You're like, cool. But then you have the people like Dennis. John Thomas was one of those guys. He was a craftsman. His daughter was artistic. So if he was doing the first ID on D-Day, he actually got on the bandsaw and made the continents and the arrows and the landing, and his daughter painted them all up, and he had literally boards, like plywood boards, of the landing maps of Normandy or whatever event, and he had the big first ID logo made out of wood, painted red and OD green. He had it all. And he was really basically he took two hobbies and squeezed them together and added his kid's hobby into it as well. And yeah, it's, a lot of us need to sit down and think, what are my other strong attributes, and how can I, as Jeff just beautifully said, kind of make my display stand on its own if I'm over here talking, because you may not even be away. You just may be in one of those conversations where somebody's really in it, and then you got Steve and Betty standing over here just looking at a table, getting ready to walk away. But as you said, if you kind of a miniature self-guided tour of your table, Jerry Oxley, another guy, he's really good at this. Before COVID, we had the honor of doing the Army's, as Jeff can tell you, every year they have the Army birthday. And every state has in different places. Here in Florida, they would have it at the Hilton in downtown Tampa. And we ran an event 6 months before. The guy who organizes it came to an event, saw our display, got a hold of Jerry. Next thing I know, we're in the Hilton downtown Tampa, setting up, the X traps on their carpet and creating a D-Day event. But Jerry had his display, but he had little cards. He printed up little cards under these items, and little, just kind of like you said Dennis did, just smaller, here's what these items were, here's what they're used for, so that when you're engaged in conversation, your display can tell its own tale. And I'm real bad at that. I need to get that sorted out too.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That was something that was interesting for me to see. Was I almost felt like it was better if I didn't talk to anybody, because then I was going to take them out of what they were experiencing. It was kind of cool. And it was neat to look back. I have this neat display that shows the Normandy beach, and the LCI is what beachheads they hit. I have the zones all colored and written out. And then I have on there the LCI, a little wooden ship, and then it's black, and then it's painted what number LCI it is all along the beaches of Normandy. And some of them are offshore because something happened to them. They hit a mine and sank or something like that.
And just for our audience to say, how big are these? Like 2 inches, 4 inches, an inch? And a half?
No, the ships are probably a half inch,
Okay.
maybe even a quarter inch.
Were these
probably a quarter inch?
Did you make these, or did you find like
and
wooden
the
ships?
ones on the billboard on the poster board, they're a quarter inch and they're numbered. Yeah, these are all things that I hand
Nice.
made. And then on the table there are probably, what would you say, Jeff? Like 6 inch,
Yeah.
6x3, and they're the shape of a ship, and it's also the LCI, and it has a little knob, and so you can match the LCI on the table to the one on the board, and you pick it up and you flip it over, and it gives you bullet points of what happened to that LCI on those different beaches. And that was really fun to see, look over and see a dad pull one up, or a young kid pull one up, and then call over to his dad and say, man, the 91 was at Omaha Dog Green, and I had no idea that these ships were even there, and look what happened to it. It hit a mine, and then it was backing off, and it hit another Teller mine, and the troop compartment number 1 was full of troops, and it caught fire and burned up all 50 guys. And to see them learn that there was more to Omaha than the Higgins boats, the ramps coming down, which of course we all know about. But that was really cool.
So if someone in our audience is trying to get ideas, so did you just have a single number on the bottom of the ship and then a corresponding board with because obviously that's a lot of information to put on the bottom of a piece of wood ship. So did you have like a number on the ship, like 1, and then you look on a board and it had that paragraph?
Yeah. So like, for instance, the 91,
Okay.
you look up on your display board and you'll see the Normandy beach, and you'll see 91 is beached at Dog Green, right? So then you look down, and laying flat on the table are all these different LCIs. And then it's the only thing on top is it'll say LCIL 91, and it's got a little knob that you can use to grab it and pull it up, and then you flip it over, and then it's got just short bullet points about probably 10 font, and about what happened to that ship. And then they're like, oh my gosh, well, look at this one. Why is this one way off the beach? What happened to that one? That's 232. So then they look around. Okay, where's the 232? Where's the 232? Okay, here's the 232. And they pick up the 232, flip it over, and they'll read about how that it hit a mine.
That's awesome.
14 guys went down with the ship, this and that.
How did you come up with that idea, especially being so new to the hobby?
That one actually goes back to my work with the LCI Association, and I was in charge of growing their archive. It was something that I volunteered to do, and I took it it was their index for their archive was about 10 pages, just on the front, and then I grew it to 150.
Wow.
Pages, and so I just made several campaigns to get artifacts and memoirs and things from the guys, and their stories and pictures and this and that, and reports and all this stuff. And so we had here in Fredericksburg at the National Museum of the Pacific War, I convinced the LCI Association to donate their archive to that museum, because I knew that they would take care of it and watch over it. And so we had a big ceremony, and so guys came from all over the country. LCI guys came, and I wanted it to be a huge event. So part of that was that I had gone to the archives in DC, and I scanned literally probably 2,000 pictures of LCIs in the Pacific and Atlantic during World War II. So then I had a fundraiser campaign, and my goal was for this meeting where we were going to donate the archive to the museum, is I thought, how cool would it be if we got to display these pictures for people to see? So we raised the money, and I made a couple hundred of these 8x10s into 8x10s. And then all along the walls in the Nimitz Hall there in the galley, and that one, not in the galley room, in the, what do you call that? The dance floor, what do you call that, Jeff?
Oh, the Nimitz Ballroom.
The ballroom. There we go. There we go. Thank you. Yeah. All along the halls, the walls of the Nimitz Ballroom, they had, at the time, they had these cork boards, and they were covered with burlap, and it was perfect. And so I just had Palau over here, and I had, the Philippines and Okinawa and Iwo Jima, the Marianas, Normandy, Italy. And so as the LCI guys and their families are filing in, they're just aghast. They didn't know these pictures even existed, and they're just beautiful from the combat photographers, and they're just milling around and they're doing all this. And part of that whole presentation is that I wanted to have an interactive display that the guys could go up and see what happened, and they could have their families there and their grandson and their kids, and okay, pull this LCI up and flip it over and you can see what happened to these LCIs. That's a long way for me to tell you how I got the idea.
Well, I want to pause
for that
real quick.
Display board.
I want to pause real quick for the importance. Okay, you said these guys walked in and there's photos that they didn't know existed. For our younger audience, we take photography for granted. Everybody has a camera. You can shoot off 2,000, however many photos your SD card can hold. You can shoot off and record videos in HD. Wasn't that long ago when the three of us were young that you would buy film for your 35 millimeter camera at $13 a roll for 24 photos, and you had to pay $9 to $10 to get them exposed. So every single photo cost money. Well, go back 40 years prior to that, cameras were even more expensive. They were harder to come by, and they weren't forgiving. People don't know the importance of a light meter, aperture settings, ISO, all that stuff. And so for these guys to walk out of nowhere to see photos, and maybe not of themselves, of situations or guys they knew from 1943, to have your youth come back to you in full black and white grainy photos, that had to be like almost a shock to the system, because once again, they came from a time where you maybe took a family photo once every 3 years. Not everybody didn't have 1,000 photos of themselves. Most of these people may have had 1 or 3 photos from themselves between the ages of 10.
That's right.
I don't even think school photos, at least high school photos, yes, but I don't even know if elementary school, middle school photos were that common at that point in time.
No.
So for them to come and see photos of a time that was long forgotten almost, and to see these just had to be completely just almost, I don't even know how you would describe that.
Yeah, it was surreal. Yeah, it was surreal because the photographs that were taken were done by actually trained combat photographers in the Navy Department or with war correspondents who then turned over their stuff, and then also the Signal Corps had some great photos as well. So, they walked in, you can imagine, and the whole time they were playing, I've got overhead, I've got playing on a loop the soundtrack for Medal of Honor or European Assault, right? So there's this great, amazing Michael Giacchino music playing the whole time they're there. And then on the big screen, I have playing an actual wartime LCI training video where they were training the crews on the different positions and how to beach and how to retract from the beach and lower the ramps and this and that. It was just all around just this tremendous display, and I was really proud to be a part of it and pull it off, and it was a lot of fun.
I'm sure when those guys left that night, they're like, this was far more than I was expecting walking up in here. I was expecting, maybe some music, a sit-down ceremony, and cutting the ribbon of a new display, but to walk into something like that.
Oh my gosh, yes. Insane. I got to tell you guys too, one more thing, and for our listeners that I think everybody would really appreciate, is my brother-in-law had come down with my sister from Alaska, and he was active duty Coast Guard, bosun's mate. And what I did was I put him up in the up in the balcony, and my dad came, and he was in his full dress uniform. He's a retired Air Force cop. He was a master sergeant. And so what I did was I knew who was going to be in the audience as far as the LCI guys. And so my dad got up there and he called roll. So he got up there and he said, motor machinist mate, first class, John Comer, LCI 502. And then John Comer, the president of the LCI Association, would stand and say, here, or present. And he'd sit down. And then Dad would say, Seaman First Class Royal Wetzel, LCIG 70. And Royal Wetzel would stand and say, "Here." And then Dad would say, "Seaman First Class Robert Minnick, LCI 449." And it would be dead quiet. And he would say, "Seaman First Class Robert Minnick, LCI 449." And then my brother-in-law stood up in the balcony and he says, "Master Sergeant Blocker, Seaman First Class Robert Minnick is not here. He was killed in action at Iwo Jima." And then he would call the next guy who would stand in the audience. I'm telling you, I got Goosebumps City right now. It was something we will never forget, as we listed 2 guys who were there, and then we listed a guy who died at Normandy, or a guy who died at the Philippines from a kamikaze attack. And my brother-in-law just booming with his voice. Nobody better to do it than the bosun's mate. And he's up there just, it was something I'll never forget. It was amazing. And then, and then plus you're surrounded by all these photographs and the video. It was just so, yeah.
You guys were talking about, Jeff, you're talking about when you woke up in the morning, Dennis, your sailor was fluffing your pillows and pouring your coffee. There's something about waking up at an event, right? Especially if it's an outdoor event, because you cots are comfortable for about 3.5 hours, and then you're just tossing and turning. If you're a side sleeper, I'm sorry, your life is going to be terrible for the night. So you're going to roll out of that rack at 5:36 in the morning anyhow, especially if it's outside. But there's just something about waking up in a uniform that you wore all day yesterday, same socks, sleeping with the itch, and there's being, I remember one year I was at a air show. I can't remember which one it was, but we were sleeping on the tarmac in the grass. And the way my pup tent, I opened a flap, sun's coming up, and all these World War II aircraft are just parked on the side of the tarmac. And just to be sleeping in a uniform, because, it's early in the morning, the F-16s aren't flying over, the Navy's not playing their techno music at their booth yet, you don't have the smell of hot dogs wafting through the air. It's just you looking at your tent and seeing the shadows and the silhouettes of all these airplanes. You can't beat it. And you got to have the people who are willing to do that morning routine. Especially if you guys are camping out, someone has to be making the SOS and making the coffee, because people are going to be hungry and they're going to be wanting food. I remember when we were at, I have a video of this somewhere. It's the only time I've seen it done. When we were at the 80th anniversary of Tarawa in Fort Morgan, Alabama, we had such a big turnout just for our Florida guys. We made spaghetti for dinner. The pot of our spaghetti sauce was so big, we had to stir it with an entrenching tool. That's how much spaghetti sauce we had.
That's awesome.
It's like this ladle isn't cutting it. Here, I dusted it off. There's no such thing as hygiene on Living History Week, and you can be out diving, running in the mud, have black powder. Just give me that Spam, whatever. Dirty entrenching tool, who cares? But yeah, I've never seen so much spaghetti sauce that we had to stir with a T-handled E-tool, all in uniform.
That's awesome.
And I remember the joke was, because that was actually during the Marine Corps birthday weekend, and we had, it was sponsored by Marine Corps League, and we had some active duty and retired Marines there. And the joke was we shared some of that spaghetti with the people, and we were making it. The lid fell off of the peppers, full of peppers in there. And so I don't know if you guys know this, but at the Marine Corps birthday, they kind of have a tradition where you can kind of call somebody out for their nonsense. I forget the terminology they use for it, but someone called out one of my guys for how spicy the spaghetti sauce was. He's like, "I was told to put in a skosh. I just put in a skosh." And like the whole joke that weekend was a skosh of chili peppers. It was just too damn hot, but it was so much fun just to, make that much food. But yeah, you have to have someone at an event, especially if you have a good contingent of guys. You got 5-10 guys there. Yeah, everybody will pack their Spam and they'll have their K rations, but nothing makes an event better than whether it's
Having a Navy guy that brings a toaster.
warm SOS, whether it's spaghetti, something warm food changes it. I remember my first 20 or so events, I just bring
toaster.
cold food. Hey, what's the old saying, Jeff?
brought
If
a
they had it,
toaster.
they would have used it.
I brought a toaster and Eggos, and I had breakfast, and to tell you what, they ate it, but it was. It's
Hey,
like,
man, if they
it was
had it, they would've
perfect. Now I
used
look
it.
back on it, it was like, that's totally Navy way right there. I made my grandpa proud, that's for sure. I had syrup and butter, and
I had it the first time last year. Paul made it, and I made it. Me and my buddy, we went camping. We went kayak camping, camped out on the lake, and I brought my World War II cook stove that I made. Perfect thing for your next event. Get your Spam, the Hawaiian King rolls, and then get a can of the round pineapple, the slits. You put that pineapple and that Spam on a hot griddle over your propane, whatever, and then put that on a Hawaiian King's roll with black coffee. Oh, it's very, very good. It sounds gross, but especially if you're hungry, it's Spam. You got to grill that pineapple up. Oh, it's so good, and it's authentic and error correct.
I did take
There's
a ribbon
nothing-
for how many brats I could get in my mouth at one time. One.
Isn't it crazy how you can get a group of 30 and 40-year-olds acting like 13-year-olds at these events? It happens every time. And by the way, for you older guys, you have to tastefully haze your young kids, right? You have to bust the young guys' balls. You have to make them do stupid stuff. Kind of what we were saying earlier, right? You kind of have to bust their balls and get them used to stressful situations a little bit, because they may be picking up your reins 10 years from now running the events. But, I think I posted a TikTok at the last train event we did, and it was, I taught one of the city kids how to build a fire. Dude, 17 years old, never made a fire before. He lives in Miami. What does he need to build a bonfire for? But it was funny because you can always tell the kids when they're making the first fire, because they're the kids poking at it all night long. They won't let that son of a gun rest. And he was sitting there poking. I was like, took a video. I was like, yeah, you can always tell when the city kids learn how to make a fire, because they'll tend to it all night long. But it's so fun to that's the other thing too, right? Teaching kids how to set up a pup tent, how to build a fire, how to maintain a fire. Here in Florida, you need kindling. Palm fronds, brown palm fronds burn forever. Great kindling. And so not only these kids learning history, they're learning camaraderie. They actually get to experience ball busting because, zero tolerance. They have never really experienced that in the last 15 years. The community is so great. I love the public and all that, but 6:30 rolls around, those doors lock, like Dennis said, it's a whole different environment. Once the public goes away and the booze comes out, it's a whole new world.
It is so much fun. It is so much fun. Don, can
There's
you tell
nothing like
everybody how
sunup.
to, huh?
I was gonna say, there's nothing like sun up at an air show, man.
No.
I mean, Don, you hit it. There's something about it, and I think I mentioned it to you, Dennis, too, when we were there. Like that's my favorite time. The public being there and talking, that's great. But sun up at an air show, with all those World War II aircraft, it's got a special feel to it. I can't explain it, but sun up at any event like that, like you said, when you're already in uniform and you've been in uniform, for a day or two, I don't know, that's a whole different experience, and it's very special to those of us who appreciate it and take part in it. There's nothing like sun up at an event for sure.
And to Dennis's point, he's talking about after the public went away, you guys got free reign. And Jeff and I have talked about this before. Being a living historian at an event in a uniform opens up all kinds of doors. Go to an air show and try to walk down a flight line in civilian clothes. See what happens. Go to an air show, walk down a flight line in full uniform, and see what happens. This way, sir. I mean, you get access to so much more stuff.
Yeah, I would say if I could give anyone who's interested in doing this in the future, one thing I would point out is to be very mindful of your host. And when we left, we policed up after our grounds where we left, and we left it better
Yeah.
than we got it. And we went up to the folks that were running it, and anything you need us to do, we helped load up chairs and tables and things we didn't even have to do. And that they took good care of us, and we reciprocated by getting in there, getting the work done, cleaning up, picking up, and then just, being respectful of the opportunity we were given, because we want them, when they hear our names, to say absolutely it can come. Yeah, yes, please come back. And that's what they say every time.
Not that you want to talk about it, but it needs to be said. If you got it, had in my 12 years, I've seen it once, maybe twice. Sadly, there may be that one guy in your community you got to weed out, because when he shows up to places, he's doing stuff like stealing golf carts. Not saying that happened. Stealing golf carts and doing stupid stuff. You can't allow somebody who can't handle their fun shut an entire event down for you guys because, they're being dumb. So sometimes you really, you got to keep an eye on those guys. And that's the interesting thing too, Dennis, you'll learn. As your community as you get to know the people in your community, Living History is probably, I'm sure there may be one or two. I can't think of maybe a comic book convention, baseball card, something, but there's a level of trust you have to have. As Jeff said, when he's not around his display, he's got to go do something.
No, that's true.
You don't even have to ask. The guy next to you is going to watch your stuff as if it's his. Some civilians come up and walk and they're going to cast an eye, and then if he sees them, hey, something I can help you with. But you'll also notice too, if a living historian shows up that maybe got chased out before or kind of has a bad reputation, you do not want to get even remotely somebody lifting an eyebrow saying, I heard that he may have done something. You don't want to get put in that category, because there is way too much financial investment on the behalf of everybody there. You do not ever want to get yourself a reputation of being a questionable, trusting guy. And, when that character does show up, you got to weed them out of there. You cannot allow that one bad apple to destroy your tree.
Yeah.
But it is amazing how people will treat your gear like theirs when you have to go use the bathroom or make a phone call or whatever. I've never had a thing walk off. Well, with the exception of one year on a train event, I had my HBT cap sitting in my pocket, and I think a kid grabbed it out of it. But other than that, I've never had anybody walk off with an item or anybody I know for that matter, had anybody walk off with an item. But you got to keep an eye out and trust the people around you. And that's part of that community.
I'd say, if you're interested in getting involved in those kind of things, message us that you'd like to how to get started, and
mail call at WTSPWorldWar2.com. We don't give enough love to our website, WTSPWorldWar2.com. We have a page on there called Quartermaster. We haven't updated it in a while, but it has links to all the primary vendors. World War II Impression at the front, What Price Glory, J. Murray and One Helmets, World War II Soldier, which is a good place to get personal items. Dennis, I know you're new to this, and I know someone just hooked you up with some stuff, but if you're looking for razors or even the boxes, the imitation boxes for the razor blades, or, the correct towels and all that stuff, World War II Soldier is a good place. Atlantic Wall Blanks, Mandalorian, Frontline Rations, they make good ration boxes. All that stuff's on our website. And I have a link on here. The Marine Corps guys who do the event up in Alabama, they are some of the most authentic guys in the world, to the point, and I got this link on our website, K-Canvas Blanco, they actually have the correct color, closest modern day equivalent to what you would have used back then to treat your haversack, your M1 belt, and it's the right color. So if you're looking for the K-Canvas Liquid Blanco Natural for Webbing to put it on your gear to make it look authentic, we have the link on our website. And of course, it comes from the United Kingdom, so you're gonna have it's not on Amazon, so it's gonna take a little while to get to you. But we have some cool stuff on there and great links. And never mentioned this either. If you go to our website, there's some banners on there. Feel free. There's some Cast King or some holsters we've given away. Patreon, obviously, our shirts, any of those links you click on our website and you purchase something, they come back and kick a few coins our way, so you can help support the show that way. And but yeah, and we have history through photos. We got all kinds of cool stuff on there as well. And if anybody's listening in the Florida, Georgia, or Alabama area, I was talking about me, Nate, and the guys earlier who are trying to maintain and help rebuild the Florida reenacting community. I've had a page on Facebook for years called Florida Southwest or Southwest Florida World War II. We've renamed it, and we also have a website called the Florida Regimental Combat Team, or the and we have a website too. So if you're in Florida or Alabama and you're looking for places to get information, we can help you out there too. So just look for the Florida Regimental Combat Team on Facebook, and we also have a website too that you can get information to. And we also put up links to current events like the I said June 3rd, it's actually June 7th. Saturday, June 7th, we're doing that event in Zephyr Hills. But yeah, so we definitely check out those, and obviously check out the What's the Scuttlebutt Facebook page and Instagram page, and which we link a lot of stuff with Jeff and all them. But yeah, you guys got anything else before we wrap up the show?
No, I think that's good. That was a nice episode.
What you reading, fella?
Yeah, so I came prepared just in case we did a what you reading. I've been really enjoying this book, and the name's been around for a while. Walter J. Boyne. Colonel Boyne he's a retired Air Force colonel who you may have seen him on like early History Channel type, like when the History Channel was history.
Yeah.
Or 15, 20 years ago. You may have seen him on a bunch of TV specials about the Air War, World War I, World War II. He's kind of one of those personalities that when you see him, you're like, oh man, I've seen that guy like 1,000 times. And I picked up this book here because, like Don, we were talking earlier, this is one of the secondary sources for my history thesis. But I'll tell you, this is just a great. It's called Clash of Wings, World War II in the Air, and it's just a really good, like, just topical approach at the Air War. In general, he goes chronologically. He's going to go back and forth between, Blitzkrieg, Battle of Britain, Japanese in China, Pearl Harbor, and then we're going to go back to ETO. So it kind of goes back and forth between the theaters, but stays chronological. It's not biased or anything like that. It's just every chapter is a different, phase of the Air War. It does not touch hardly at all on anything in the ground, except for it may say it's a compliment to the ground forces, or something like that. So it keeps the ground out of it completely. It's strictly just air. And like I said, it's just a good all-encompassing book. If you just love the aerial warfare perspective, and I've learned a lot. I really have. I've learned a lot more about how integral control of the air was for every operation we did. I mean, there was not a single Luftwaffe fighter in the skies at D-Day, and that doesn't get the credit enough.
Yeah.
I mean, D-Day's always about the ground, but what set the stage was the destruction of the Luftwaffe, and you kind of go through the phases of the antiquated Navy aircraft, right? The beginning of the war, the Vindicators, the Buffaloes, things like that. Of course, the Wildcat had its shortcomings in P-40, and then enter the Hellcat, of course, and then the Helldiver. And you see that progression, and never really thought of it. But, the Japanese, it was the zero, like
Yep.
through the war, right? I mean, yeah, the Oscar and the George and the Frank, things like that. But, and the Judy, supposed to be the new Kate, I guess, or the Val. But for the most part, there was really not that kind of innovation in the air that we saw, right? I mean, and even you look from the German perspective, right? It's 109s flying in Battle of Britain, and it's just a later variant 109 flying in 1944, and we completely redesigned things and rebuilt things, and we start off with P-47s and then enter P-51s, right? But there was never really an enemy aircraft that was like, oh wow, this changes everything.
Mhm.
I understand setting aside the ME-262, but again, that's kind of like, yeah, that changed things, but that changed things more after the war than it ever did during. Yeah, that was no big like, oh, that's a huge obstacle. How are we going to overcome? So it just kind of opened my mind to that.
Yeah.
Never really thought of that before. That they just our enemy didn't have the aerial innovation like we did, and they didn't have the quality pilots, to train the next crop. The
Hmm.
pilots that flew, for example, in the turkey shoot at the Battle of Philippine Sea, were not the pilots that flew at Pearl Harbor. Were not the pilots that had, dozens of kills in China. Those guys were gone, and some of them that flew, or even for the kamikazes, none of them were qualified to land on an aircraft carrier,
Yeah.
and they didn't have to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why waste the
it's
training?
funny, but it's
Yeah.
like,
Why
I
waste the
mean,
training?
they just weren't trained.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting.
interesting book.
Um, Obviously, we benefited greatly from it in the 50s with the space program and flight, but it it raises the question: was Germany so hindered in their air coverage? Obviously, we were bombing the hell out of their plants, but we also know that they were spending an inordinate amount of time trying to get the jet engine and jet propulsion systems off the ground, no pun intended. And it's like you kind of got to ask yourself the question: well, maybe if they, you know, spend a little less funding on the jet side of their Luftwaffe and spend a little more production time on propeller based planes to replace the ones that were being destroyed, if they would have had a little bit more of a contingency during those times.
Now think about if they would have built several variants of a four-engine long-range bomber.
Yeah,
That could have changed things
'cause I mean,
drastically. And
to get jet propulsion, to invent it and get it off the ground, and to try to mass produce that's a tremendous amount of funding and materials for a country who was running short on both and manpower.
right,
Hey Dennis, what you reading?
I'm reading the story of Dr. Vassal
Yeah.
by James Hilton. It's a story of a American doctor in Java, and he finds himself in the company of survivors from the Houston and a British ship that was sunk, and they have to evacuate them from Java, and a lot of it is fiction. Some of it is fiction, but a lot of it is based off of an actual Dr. Bossel and his efforts to help them escape and whatnot. And I understand that there's even a movie about it with Gary Cooper.
Interesting.
But it's kind of what I'm reading to my girlfriend every night before we turn out the lights, and I'll read from it. And
Now, not to
it's
get too
good.
personal, but are you reading this while sitting up against your headboard? Or are you pacing across the floor like you're giving a lecture to a college class as you're reading this book aloud?
Oh no, we just lay there. My
I
soothing, my soothing, my soothing voice puts her to sleep very fast.
Hopefully it's your voice and not the subject matter. We'll say it's the voice. But good on her for allowing you to share your passion and to read it aloud amongst the two of you and your cat or dog or both.
We actually
Or neither.
watched Midway together,
Nice.
the one from the '70s on Memorial Day. Yeah,
I I haven't read anything in about 2 weeks. I've been wicked busy. Plus, for those of y'all who pre-ordered it, I believe, at least according to my Amazon, our friend Henry's book should be showing up in our mailboxes here in a couple of days on the 3rd. So the next book I'm going to be reading probably on Tuesday.
he's been tearing it up on the podcasts,
I just
and
saw he was on Jocko Willick's podcast.
yeah, he was on Jocko. It was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it.
So,
He's got such a great voice, and he's so good at telling his stories. It was just Jocko was riveted. We were all riveted. It was so great.
and so his book, The Old Breed: The Complete Story Revealed, A Father, a Son, and How World War II in the Pacific Shaped Their Lives by W. Henry Sledge will be getting to my mailbox and everybody else who pre-ordered on the 3rd. And so that's going to be what I'll be talking about on the next episode of What You're Reading. And we're so thrilled for Henry.
Yeah, for sure.
From the day he came on here, he was trying to figure out, how to get this idea he had off the ground and get it in everybody's hands. And I'm so thrilled that he was able to achieve that. And no one knows more about that than Dennis. I mean, you've gotten quite a few books out of your mind and onto the paper and into the shelves as well. And so, good on you for
So
that.
cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that book of his. Yeah.
So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We want to remind you once again, we want to hear from you. Email us at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com. And until we see again, my name is Don for Dennis and Mr. Jeff Copsetta. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate each and every one of you tuning in for every episode. And we'll talk to you all in 2 weeks.